Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is Soviet Russian Bear, and Joaquin is back with me. So today we're discussing, thanks for joining, Joaquin. So today we're discussing the U.S. election and Russia. So it has really been bothering me for the last 4 years. The narrative, the U.S. narrative of the Russian collusion. Trump-Russia collusion, so the Bob Mueller investigation. So please, what can you tell us about Bob Mueller investigation, and will the Dems try to play the same trick over again in 2020 election?
No, it's a two-part question. All right. So look, the Russian collusion hoax.
Yeah, it's a hoax.
Was the biggest lie that we've seen. It was a nothing burger, but it's not just that. I happen to know firsthand because if anyone looks and reads carefully the Wikipedia articles, okay, which are not necessarily accurate, but I'm saying, like, go look at them. There were two parts of this before we get into Wikipedia, right? But there were two parts to the Mueller investigation. There was whether a member of the Trump campaign or someone in contact with Trump's campaign was in contact with someone who was in contact with people close to the Kremlin. Now, if you just counted the number of, separations between the people and the hedging language that's used, you'll see, like, right away that there was, like, not only was there nothing, but there was nothing talking about nothing. But that was the first part. So there was a guy who actually claimed to have been adjacent to the Trump campaign. He was a plant. I'm not going to even get into the Steele dossier part of it.
Oh, yeah.
That's just how the story was planted. Okay, that's just how the story was planted, and he's the same guy who was involved in, guess what, the Novichok hoax.
Wow.
So yeah. So
what's the guy's name again, please?
Steele.
Steele. Oh.
Yeah, and I believe he was involved in the Nigerian yellow cake uranium hoax.
Oh.
That Tony Blair, when he involved in Iraq.
Oh yeah.
Okay,
so please, could you tell us more about Mr. Robert Mueller and his investigation? Why his investigation was basically a nothing burger, and many never Trumpers actually put a lot of hope in this guy, that, oh, indictment, impeach Trump out now. So why did this Mueller guy fail their hopes? He just...
Yeah, so the United States is, in theory, like a country governed by laws and not by men. But it's governed by men who bend the laws to their will. Let's be real. But insofar as his investigation went, because of the amount of scrutiny involved, and maybe because of other things involved too, that we can get into, he could not fudge the investigation. Everything had been a matter of record. All of the things that he was looking at had already passed through the Congress, and things had been passed through the House Intelligence Intel Committee. So the two parts of this nonsense were that a guy who had been a contact in Middle East affairs tried to he is the one who reached out to Trump campaign people, and the campaign is not like your administration in waiting. Okay, this is why it's so much nonsense. Campaign is easier to fake that you have contact with because it's an electoral campaign. This is like the advertising agency of Trump. It's not the administration that he was going to build once if elected, right? So they were trying to. So this guy who was involved in Middle East stuff tried to insert himself. Now, what's interesting is that what the Mueller investigation did uncover in relation to this guy's whole let's say, laptop
Oh.
was that he had involved in child trafficking and pedophilia.
Wow.
So those charges were hanging over his head. And as soon as the Mueller report failed from his testimony, from his reports, failed to establish any connection between the Trump campaign and Russians, vaguely Russians, whatever the fuck this is supposed to mean, vaguely Russians, then they, this is so stupid, man. Then he was actually, based on the stuff that they did have in Mueller investigation, actually convicted him of child pornography.
Wow.
And he was not only convicted but sentenced, and he's now in prison. I believe he's already started his sentence. I don't know, 5, 10, 15 years, something. So that was no one covers this. like this is so funny that the people aren't like plugged into this shit, right? So people can Google who that guy was, and then just put Mueller investigation, key witness, pedophilia, and you'll find it. The names are irrelevant because it's like most people, if you don't have a face to the name, it's just you get lost on the names. So I'll just say the guy who said this and the guy who did that. Okay. The second part of the so-called Russian interference,
the second part,
whatever that means, was that it's no secret to the people investigating me. So this is the first time I'm going to say it publicly.
Yeah.
So and you can verify this, and I can show you how to verify it. So the people I know in St. Petersburg, okay, who I have never worked for, okay, but I publish things publicly, right, about the world and shit. Okay. People may be asking themselves, like, why is this coming out on a relatively super fucking obscure YouTube channel? And where has Joaquin been for the past 3-4 years? And it's all one answer. So I've been under investigation, under intense scrutiny from the people poking and probing. There's a CIA, has people on salary. And just like in the Army, you have like captains and special forces who have salary. So they might break off and they might have a private version, like a, Wagner or Blackwater. So the intelligence industry has the same thing. So they started one. So CIA people that are never Trumpers.
Yeah.
We're talking about Brenner's people. His people started a group called New Knowledge based in Texas. And they were writing and doing investigations that were submitted to be pursued by the Russiagators within the Senate and within the Congress and the intelligence, the U.S. Senate Intel Committee, something like this. Anyway, there's a report that they made. So I feature prominently in this report. They do this whole RICO. People know what RICO is. It's like where you say there's a conspiracy based on this guy knows this guy. Okay. You'll see my name like big, my projects. They have it like me at the top of this whole conspiracy. There's like Al-Masdar News. There's Leif Badel. There's a former writer of mine, Paul Antonopoulos, who's somewhere down below myself in this chart. There's, Center for Syncretic Studies. There's Alexander Dugin, Kandahar Project, Geopolitica, and I was saying, this Flores worked with Dugin, this and that.
And Russia and Putin.
The Russians, the Russian troll factory.
Yeah.
These people so the people from the St. Petersburg troll army, are on the what is it, March 2015 U.S. Treasury sanctions. So you can't do business with these people. Okay. I'm established as a non-profit NGO. We're investigating ideologies, thoughts, and what moves people here. So, we're scientists and shit. We're involved in academic.
You're just a think tank.
Reports to the public. We're allowed to do these things. We're not in business.
Yeah.
So we never even received a donation from these people, as far as I can tell.
Oh, yeah.
So, and here I am. But this is what people want to know, is that what the Mueller investigation was looking at is if these people. So look, I did a report about Black Lives Matter, Native Americans. I've published some of these publicly, most of them. And I've had conversations with people, and I've, just told them things, and I wouldn't even say there's a monetary value to the things that I said, let alone that I received anything for that, right? But I just really, I am what's called a true believer, right? So I know that I have a sense of geopolitics and what are called spheres of influence, and I'm not really happy with the globalist ideology of, let's say, the way that globalist ideology is used in the sphere of premising international law on the foundation of a universalism which supersedes the enforcement of law by itself. So, in other words, the only thing that should be universal about international accords is that they are internationally respected, but you can't have an international framework which dictates the policy, the social, the ideological, and cultural life of different civilizational spheres in the world. I think that's very dangerous. And even from a liberal perspective, it's very dangerous. There was the liberal philosopher Mill has this whole thing called experiments in living. I mean, even the United States, where you have 13 different colonies and each one has its, became states and each one has its different laws, is so that, look, if you make a mistake and then you universalize that mistake, you've hit a civilizational trap, dead end. The global catastrophe, if the entire world has one idea, and that one idea is the wrong idea, then you're extinct. So you need a world of diversity and difference, of not experimentation, but of diversity, and that the experiment is not intentional, it's just through observation you can see, like, hey, the Chinese are doing this better, or the Africans are doing that better. If we don't have people doing things differently based on different cultural norms, which are expressed as sort of different economic modes, different legal frameworks in these different civilizations, then we don't have anything to learn from or compare to. We can't tweak our own and take and learn to see what works. So universalism is a dead end. And so people don't understand how high-functioning autists like myself operate in the world, you see. They just, people who are careerists are like, well, he's not getting paid for this. I mean, he must be getting paid for this because this is like high-level thoughts that have, perhaps influenced the outcome of the U.S. elections, which I don't believe that they did, but that was alleged. So back to the story is that I just have a passion for the world that I live in, and I understand that this is also a world of illusion, you see, because I am a spiritual being, right? We are all spiritual beings that have traveled a great interdimensional distance, and we have chosen to be here in this moment, Yuri.
Yeah, I know. You told
the
me.
money, that people don't understand what my motivations are, you see. So, getting deeper into this, the St. Petersburg troll army.
My man, I've been accused of working for this troll army. They say, we know you're sitting there in St. Petersburg and you're in front of your monitor just I said, and I got so fed up with this. I said, well, actually, how do you found that out about me? I am in St. Petersburg.
No, St. Petersburg troll army are real people. I mean, you have different individuals, but it was a physical location. They were outed a few times. The New York Times Magazine ran a few stories, actually ran the same story twice with different leakers. I was asked to make a report on how the leaking happened, and I told them that their own operation must have been designed to self-leak because this is a nothing burger story that was designed to be a trap, right? So, there was nothing going on. The St. Petersburg troll army does exist, but they exist primarily to influence internal politics within Russia. Russian soft power is, like in media, is done as an expression through Russia Today. It's highly mediated. Russia Today exists by agreements with liberal forces in the West, and they do all kinds of cleaning and trading and so forth. It's hard to explain how these media intelligence operations work in depth, within the confines of the time that we have right now. But what I tell you is that that is what they do. The troll army placed ads on Facebook relating to Black Lives Matter, Native Americans, and things like that. I wrote reports about the fact that, Native Americans, different populations, and how these form different ethnos within the United States. I wrote a report about how about 25% of Americans across the United States want their state to leave the United States peacefully. They want to secede from the United States peacefully. And I just commented that, and this is without any outside influence or without any concerted political campaigns. I mean, if that's a 25% organic number, right? This is not with any pushing or public service announcements or propaganda that's to increase, right? That, right? So that's very potent stuff. And I said, this is a potential problem in the United States if it doesn't solve its problems and address long-standing issues. I'm a big advocate of First Peoples, Native Americans. So, as a Native American Mexican myself, so what I would say is that the nothing burger of the Mueller investigation was those two components. It was a guy who was the key witness who turned out to be a pedophile, and it looks like they were holding the pedophile charges over his head to get a successful bad report on Trump that would lead to an indictment on Trump. That didn't happen, and then he was convicted of and sentenced to pedophile, or even I think it was pedophile. I don't think he was involved in trafficking. I think it was just like on his hard drive he had a bunch of kids porn. So then what happened is then the second part was, like I said, it was the St. Petersburg troll army took out advertising on Facebook, which one might say, I didn't connect these dots, but what I believe the investigation that hasn't been published, but you can read about those documents on Wikipedia because all of the claims that are made about the Russian troll army and the U.S. Senate Intelligence Committee report linked to the new knowledge report that features myself in the way I described with the RICO chart and the whole thing. So that's where Joaquin has been for the last few years. I've been dealing with big shit here, but I'm going to tell you, man, it's been a lot of pressure, but a lot of soul searching too, and you kind of really, when you're in the heat of the battle.
Excuse me, Joaquin, for interrupting you, but you're in Serbia now, and are there some sort of CIA agents in Serbia who were putting pressure on you, my friend?
Well, we had actually, it's strange, but actually through Mossad. So we, my operation in the office, number of employees, I guess you would call them volunteers or whatever, and running the newspaper, right, Fort Bruce News. So we had a gentleman come from Texas, a young guy. Well, he was in his early 30s. So he's a man in the world, and he'd been traveling around Eastern Europe and Russia and stuff like that. And he had been actually at the beginning. We're talking about an infiltration from Mossad now. From Mossad, 2 infiltrators from Mossad, and he was. I'm not going to name names. People who know the story, maybe in the comments.
You don't need to. You don't need to.
No, people will know. But a guy was. He was like. He was on steroids, and he was like a big Hulk. But it was like hiding the fact that he was a heroin addict anyway. So what people are like, well, how can a Mossad agent be? It's like, because he's not a fucking Mossad officer. He's a Mossad asset. What the people, how these operations work is assets are deployed, and they can be fucking crazy people. They could be just like
drug addicts.
What?
Drug addicts.
Drug addicts. People who just come in to mess up your operation and then try to steal stuff from your hard drive, report back and leak your stuff, whatever, or record you talking, ask you questions, record it, whatever. Okay, it's not like James Bond stuff. It's like they get all kinds of people. So the guy had been posing as a Viking German neo-Nazi guy who was into the Ukraine story and was
a Mossad neo-Nazi. Wow.
Well, not infamous, I would say.
I'm sorry, man, but it's just so funny.
The Pravi sector's English language minister of information was a Ukrainian neo-Nazi named Elena Semeniaka, and so he had been like highly involved in talking to her regularly through social media. Then he gets like a Kazakh or Astrakhan girlfriend and lives in Astrakhan for a while, where he then says he loves Russia, even though the girlfriend I think hates Russia.
No shit.
And but he's, I came to love Russia, and now I'm on the pro-Donbass side of things, and I really want to come to Serbia and work for the newspaper. I'm like, well, probably not, dude. I mean, we're not we just on a shoestring budget here, and we have we're all staffed up, Yeah. But he traveled through, and my spidey senses were tingling, but I put the guy up for a couple of weeks. He wanted to move to Belgrade and stuff like that.
Mhm.
He wanted to write some articles, so we let him do that kind of stuff. So it turns out, so one time I come into the office and he's like fucking OD'd on the floor in the office, like, on the tile floor, and like, copy machine computers and stuff, like, it's like not, it's not in a bathroom. He's like in the middle of the floor, because
Oh man.
the office was like a compound that had like quarters for members, for agents, whatever, like in the wings. It was a very large villa.
Oh yeah.
Had like 4 bedrooms, multiple bathrooms. And so he like comes down from some high, and he's like on the floor, or he's OD'd or something.
Oh.
And he's like, his duffel bag is like right there, and I'm just like seeing in there, and I see his duffel bag is practically open. I mean, it's open. It's practically the contents are exposed, and I see that he has an Israeli passport like right there.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, wow, this guy has an Israeli passport. Like, what type of Viking, Nazi, communist, Nazbol, whatever, bodybuilder, heroin addict, has an Israeli passport. Oh, that's what's going on, right? So, the guy OD'd. He lived through that OD, and then, from arm's length, man, I don't care. Like Israelis, Colombians, whatever, Norwegians, I don't care, dude. It's like people. I know he has a mission, but my mission is not what people think my mission is. I'm here for a very different reason. When people understand, so he can do that you can infiltrate. Like you're infiltrating the illusion, bro. You're just in your own world of illusion. So infiltrate away. Have fun. Is like my hands are clean. You're not gonna learn. No one's gonna learn anything that isn't already out there for the world to see.
Yeah.
So go do your thing. So I helped him actually get an apartment after that. And then he got kicked out. He moved. And then he came over and wanted to get paid for something that had already been paid for, and was like, but it was drugs. He wanted drug money and stuff. And I told him no. After I helped him again, though, to like, I called his landlord to get his like rent deferred, so he could be late, so he could like contact his parents, and they could send him. So I didn't realize they were like prominent members of the Jewish community in Texas, where they are. And within a few days, he was missing. His parents contacted me through social media. I didn't even know where his new apartment was that he was living. And it is claimed by a few people that he is dead, but we couldn't verify that. Maybe they just scrubbed his identity, gave him a reassignment, relocation, stuff like that. But apparently his parents came, or they had his remains sent to Israel, and then his parents met his remains in Israel, or met him. I don't know what happened, but apparently he's dead. Then the next guy came. So one of our people was a young female in her late 20s, and she'd been talking to a guy who said he was a Canadian Russian, who was a GRU officer in the Donbass, right? And oh man, this one. So he begins to like, she was single and stuff like that. She's a young, attractive woman. Some of you know who she is. And so what happens is like, he starts like, sending her things in the mail and chocolates and things, and having like local couriers bring her roses and stuff. So he wants to come to Belgrade, but things are coming out, and other people on the team were like, hey, this guy is bullshit. Like, you can't be a Canadian citizen and a GRU officer. Like, they have rules about this stuff. Turns out he's not even a dual citizen. Like, he's not like a dual citizen of the Russian Federation. He turns out that he has Ukrainian citizenship, Turkish residency, and Israeli citizenship, and Canadian citizenship. Turns out his father was like the district attorney, or whatever they called it in Canada, for the province he lived in, Ontario. And is heavily involved in the Zionist Jewish community. Now, there's the Jewish community, and then there's like the Zionist Jewish community, which is heavily connected to the embassy and stuff. So I'm not saying that all Jews are Zionists or anything like that.
No,
I'm
no,
being
no.
specific, right? So the Zionist, support, or Israeli support network in government in that part of Canada, his father. So this guy was like, so fortunately, he ends up breaking her heart. And I say fortunately because what happens is she is like, hey, when he came to visit, he had a USB and he was trying to get me to put this USB in your computer and like fire up your computer and run the executable. And I was like, wow, well, thanks for telling me just because he broke your heart. But, if he hadn't done that, I mean, who knows? Like, they would have found out that I got nothing. So,
Yeah.
that's what's so stupid about the Mueller investigation. So there was a lot of, attempts to collect intel and stuff like that, infiltration. And I don't know why I would outsource to Mossad, but I would assume because we exposed that Kolomoisky and the Pravi sector and the Ukrainian Nazis are being heavily financed by dual citizen
Israel,
Ukrainian
yeah,
Jewish
yeah.
operatives in the Ukraine.
Yeah, I talked about when the Euromaidan was still a thing, like when there was still like battles going on the streets.
Right.
I told I believe I was talking with Morris, and I told about the double Israeli citizenship, about Kolomoisky and other double Israeli Jewish oligarchs financing the Euromaidan.
Yeah. No, it was Morris. Rest in peace.
Yeah, rest in
But
peace.
yeah,
I respect that dude. Even though we had our disagreements, we
yeah.
even stopped cooperating. But man, may he rest in peace. He was a great guy actually.
He was. No, he got in trouble with the. There was a guy named like Kareem Akbar,
Yeah.
who was like a black guy from America who had joined ISIS, and he was like a white helmets guy in Syria, and Morris was interviewing this guy like he was gospel, and it was like, and he, Morris, with his intelligence and his heart and his depth of understanding, he boiled it down to, well, if the U.S. is attacking ISIS, then maybe ISIS is doing something good. That was like this general, idea. I'm like, no. The U.S. is divided. That's why Trump came to power, because the U.S., the Pentagon, and the CIA were backing different forces. They were backing Kurds over here, but backing ISIS over there. And you had like the Obama ISIS connection through the CIA, but you had the Pentagon backing the Kurds, the YPG and stuff. So that, Trump came in and established the new Syrian Democratic Forces, or the Syrian SDF, to resolve these contradictions, involve local Arabs and Syrians, and to make it less Kurdish, and to resolve the issue, and to cut all the funding out of the ISIS project. And then have Russia do the aerial campaigns and do the logistic support for the Syrian Arab army on the ground. I'm very certain that Trump and Putin coordinated very heavily on cleaning up Syria in the end there. That was a very interesting story. But I digress. The Mueller investigation had nothing, said nothing, and people just read and understand language. First read 1984 and understand how language is destroyed. Then understand what hedging language is, what vague language is, that synonyms are not the same thing as synonyms are not the same things as analogies, and that words are being used. So, for example, Democrats and Rachel Maddow and people promoting this lie still insist that the Mueller report said something, and they blatantly lie about the conclusions of the Mueller report. They blatantly lie. The New York Times blatantly lies in the first paragraph or in the headline of their thing. The Mueller report showed that there was no evidence that Russia even attempted to interfere. That there was no evidence that they even attempted to interfere in a coordinated way with anyone relating to Trump. Now, that is separate from claims that, it showed that Trump was not successful, and this just showed he was not successful at it, and this just shows how incompetent he is. They try to make it back to Trump's stupid something. Trump's clearly some kind of genius, regardless of what you think about, many things you could criticize, but the guy is the opposite of stupid.
Absolutely,
but the liberal delusion and liberal critiques of power is always based on flattery of the audience, and that flattery of the audience is to think that we're all smarter than the people in power. No, those fuckers are in power for a reason. Like, believe me, like, they may be evil, they may be wrong, they may be good, they may be bad, but they are there not, like, if they have power. Now, I'm not talking about AOC, who's fundamentally a moron, and there are some Q-tard candidates and stuff.
AOC doesn't. I'm sorry, but AOC doesn't know what a garbage disposal is.
Really? Yeah, no, AOC, I went to university with people like this, these campus leftists, and, I love people of all, of all both genders. But I tell you that, the issue is that, like, it's not about, like, women and stuff like that. They want to make it be about that, but she's actually an idiot. I mean, she would be an idiot,
Regardless
if
of
her
her
chromosomes were
gender.
different. Say what? Regardless of gender, yeah, which is the same as sex.
Yeah.
And, you know, she's actually an airhead.
Yeah.
But we had been observing this come from the socialist part of the left and the socialist adjacent part of the Democratic Party for decades. For decades, it had been the virtue signaling. It destroyed the left. It destroyed the radical left in the U.S. Like, there was a real radical. I mean, you look at, like, the IWW, even you look at the Teamsters, you look at, I recommend watching the movie Hoffa. If you want to see what the left is, watch the movie Hoffa. If you want to see, or, watch the movie Matewan. This is the left. This is how the left became these upper middle class elite institutions based in cities and from people so detached from the experience of living working people has been one of the larger psychological operations of the last number of decades in the United States. I mean, this is, and I have no illusion that the left can make a comeback or we can save the left. No. We, this is a new time, new century.
They are a lost cause.
They are a lost cause, but but there were some very good ideas in there that need to be promoted. But here's the thing: when you promote those ideas without all of the nonsense they've added onto it, they say, "Oh, that's fascism." So when you promote the ideas of the left without all the nonsense that was added since the 70s, but institutionally since only 20 years ago, that's now you're a fascist. So so I get, and I've been dealing with all those attacks too. So many hit pieces on me. And I'm not complaining, dude. It makes me stronger. I'm like, hey, you know what? It's like no such thing as bad coverage. There's no such thing as bad press. There's no such thing as bad media. There's no such thing as a real hit piece. So this has brought a lot of visibility. It built so much support. People have written to me from around the world and reached out to me and have been just nothing but supportive because these people are promoting what I'm doing by trying to attack me, and I thank them for that. It's all synergistic energy. It's just like they're attacking me, and then I just I don't see that as an attack. I just use that energy to be the thing that I need it to be. So they're creating the energy, right?
Yeah.